Hello, friends, and welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. Let's start today's video with a story about a mom who came up with the perfect solution for picky eaters. And years later, that same rule ended up humbling a grown man. From childhood dinners of liver and onions to a father-in-law learning how to make chili, this is how You Complain, You Cook became the ultimate family equalizer. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. You complain, you cook. I grew up poor. And not that we didn't have cable kind of poor, I mean the real deal. Food stamps, hand-me-downs from neighbors, and nights where the power, water, and phone got shut off because the bills didn't get paid. We lived frugally, stretched every dollar, and wasted absolutely nothing. Because food was never guaranteed, Mom had a strict rule at dinner: clean your plate. Didn't matter if it was liver and onions, soggy Brussels sprouts, or something experimental that came out weird. If it was on your plate, you ate it. Complaining didn't get you anywhere except maybe a glare that could melt steel. Eventually, even Mom got sick of the constant chorus of, "Ew, what's that? And why can't we have pizza?" So she introduced a new rule that quickly became legendary in our house: you complain, you cook. It was brilliant. Simple, fair, and it shut us up almost overnight. If you whined about dinner, congratulations, tomorrow night the kitchen was yours. Didn't matter if you were 10 years old or 15, you were making dinner for everyone. At first we thought it was a bluff. Then my older brother complained about the meatloaf, and the next night we had undercooked spaghetti noodles swimming in cold tomato sauce. Mom just smiled sweetly, said thank you, and ate every bite. Lesson learned. Over time, all of us kids got our turn at the stove, whether we wanted to or not. We learned to appreciate the effort that went into cooking, even if we didn't love liver and onions. Fast forward a few years, I was 19 and had just moved in with my fiance's family. It wasn't what it sounds like. His parents were very traditional and conservative. I had his bedroom, he slept on the couch, and his mom made sure everyone knew there was to be no funny business. It was a proper old-school household. Dad worked full-time, Mom stayed home. Dad did all the outside chores, lawn, garage, car maintenance, and Mom did everything inside. Cooking, cleaning, laundry, you name it. They were kind people, but the gender roles were, well, let's just say dated. One night, Mom made dinner. I can't remember what it was exactly. Something like a casserole or maybe stew, and Dad wasn't happy about it. Not just, I don't really like this unhappy, but loud, red-faced, practically scolding her about what she'd cooked. It rubbed me the wrong way. Growing up, we'd have never gotten away with talking to Mom like that, especially over food. So without really thinking, I spoke up. I had a rule growing up, I said, trying to keep my tone light. If you complain about dinner, you have to cook the next one. Mom froze mid-bite. My fiance looked at me like I'd just set off a firework indoors. Dad chuckled, that kind of dismissive, "Oh, kids these days laugh." But I didn't back down. "No, really," I said. "You hurt her feelings, so what are you cooking tomorrow night?" The room went silent. You could almost hear the gears turning in Dad's head as he realized I wasn't joking. Mom looked equal parts shocked and delighted. My fiancé looked like he wanted to disappear under the table. Dad tried to laugh it off, tried to deflect, but there wasn't much he could say without looking worse. Eventually, he sighed and muttered, "Fine, I'll cook." And wouldn't you know it, the next night he actually did. He made chili, and not just any chili. This man went all in. Beans, beef, peppers, the works. He even baked cornbread to go with it. And damn if it wasn't good. When we all sat down, Mom smiled and said, "See, not so bad being in the kitchen, huh?" He grumbled something about it being a one-time deal, but everyone could tell he was secretly proud of himself. From that night on, he never raised his voice about dinner again, and every now and then, when Mom was tired or needed a break, he'd make his famous chili. Turns out the old "you complain, you cook" rule works just as well on grown men as it does on kids. By invoking your childhood rule, you did something extraordinary. You didn't accuse him of being sexist or disrespectful. You didn't get into a moral argument. You simply applied a neutral, logical consequence that was impossible to rationally refute. You presented him with a simple equation. If the product is unsatisfactory, then the critic must demonstrate a better way. And our second story. She wouldn't share handicapped parking spot. So picture this. Early 2000s, East Coast City, 3-family house, me on the first floor, my upstairs neighbor, a real piece of work, on the second, and a sweet older lady on the third. Parking was already a nightmare, but I'm disabled and needed regular access close to my home. So after some paperwork and persistence, I finally got the city to install a handicap parking sign right in front of our house. It was a godsend. My back and legs made long walks from random street parking almost impossible, and the city-issued spot meant I could finally pull up right outside my front door without worrying. Except my upstairs neighbor decided that spot belonged to her. Now, she wasn't disabled, not even close, but the moment that new shiny handicap sign went up, she started parking there like she'd fought the city for it herself. Every single day. At first, I tried to be civil about it. I caught her one morning just as she was unlocking her car. "Hey, could you leave the handicap spot open? That's mine. I went through City Hall to get it approved." She barely looked up and said, "It's public parking. I live here too." Then she just walked away and drove off. All right, fine. Maybe she didn't understand how it worked. I tried again a few days later, placard in hand, showing her it was legally tied to my plate. She just smirked and said, "You don't own the street." That's when I called City Hall. Surely they'd back me up, right? Nope. The city clerk told me we only authorize one handicap spot per address. I said, "Okay, but I'm the one who applied for it." "Doesn't matter. Anyone living at that address can use it if they have a placard." "So you're telling me she can just take my spot every day?" Technically, yes. I hung up and sat there, seething. This woman had lived there for years and never applied for a handicapped permit, so either she was faking it, borrowing someone's expired tag, or most likely just being an entitled jerk who didn't like walking an extra half block. For months it went on like this. She'd wait for me to leave, then swoop in like a hawk the moment the spot was free. I'd circle the block in pain, forced to park 2 streets over. I tried talking again, same attitude. Too bad, first come, first serve. And then one glorious winter morning, I finally snapped. It had snowed the day before, but the next morning was that miserable post-storm mix of slush and ice, the kind that sticks to everything. I looked out my window and saw her car parked snugly in my spot, again. And I swear, something in my brain just clicked. I grabbed my shovel, went outside, and started scooping up big, wet heaps of slush. I piled them right across her windshield, nice and thick. Then I splashed a little extra water on top for good measure. The temperature was already dropping fast, and by the time the sun set, it was well below freezing. I didn't need to see it. I knew that car was now sealed under a sheet of rock-solid ice. The next morning, I peeked out the window. There she was, standing next to her car, scraping away at the windshield with a plastic ice scraper that wasn't doing a damn thing. Every time she smacked the ice in frustration, I swear I heard angels singing. She gave up after 15 minutes, stomped back inside, and didn't touch that car again for 2 days. And wouldn't you know it, she never parked there again. About 6 months later, I moved out of that place for a job in another city, but before I left, I made one last call to City Hall, not to transfer the spot, but to have it removed. I figured if I couldn't enjoy it, she sure as hell wasn't going to either. They came by and took down the sign the week after I moved out. To this day, 20 years later, I still smile thinking about that ice-glazed windshield and the look on her face when she realized she couldn't budge it. Was it petty? Absolutely. Was it vandalism? Not technically. Was it the most satisfying winter project I've ever completed? You bet your frozen tailpipe it was. And before anyone asks, no, I didn't take a spot from someone who needed it. My placard was valid, and she never had a legitimate one. She could have easily applied for her own if she needed it, but she didn't. So yeah, maybe I was a little bit of a jerk that day, but after months of dealing with her selfishness, I like to think Mother Nature just helped me set things straight. You did all the work, why should your lazy neighbor benefit from something that took your time and paperwork? Petty maybe, but sweet revenge served with a cherry on top. And our next story. He was furious we were on his property. I work for a water company in the UK, the kind that deals with everything from burst mains to cranky old pipes that predate color TV. Usually, people are fine when we show up. They might grumble about the mud, but they understand we're there to help. But every so often, we get one of those customers. This story's about one. He'd been calling nonstop for weeks about poor water pressure. Every day, it was the same thing. My water's a bloody trickle. He eventually threatened legal action, so the higher-ups finally said, fine, let's send a crew out to check it. That crew was me and my teammate Paul. The plan was simple. check the external stopcock just inside the edge of his driveway, test the flow, see if the problem was in our system or his. Quick job, 30 minutes tops. Before heading out, I asked around to make sure someone had given notice. One of the guys from the office said, "Yeah, I dropped off some letters 2 days ago. Both properties were told you're coming." Perfect. No surprises. We drove down the stone track toward the property, 2 houses at the end. We always check with residents before we start digging, just to make sure no one's trapped by our barriers or needs their car out. First house, an elderly lady, sweet as tea, said she doesn't drive. The second, a younger woman who said, "Give me 20 minutes, love. Just need to get the horse out." "Not a problem," I said. "We'll grab a coffee while you get sorted." She smiled and thanked us for being patient. We chilled in the van, chatting and sipping coffee until she came trotting out on the horse, waved at us, and headed off. 5 minutes later, we started unloading the gear. Barriers, cones, spades, all the usual stuff. That's when we heard tires screeching behind us. A car whipped into the road, half-blocking the lane. The door slammed, and out stormed this guy in his mid-40s, red in the face and radiating pure rage. You could tell from the way he walked that he was about to make someone's day worse. He stomped right up to me and shouted, "What the F do you think you're doing?" Now I'm at work, so I have to be polite, even with jerks. "Good morning, sir," I said evenly. "We're from the water company. We've had reports of low pressure, so we're checking the external stop tap on your boundary to see if we can improve the flow." His eyes went wild. "You can F right off if you think you're digging up my drive without even telling me." I blinked. "Sir, we did send letters out 2 days ago explaining what we'd be doing today." "Don't effing lie to me," he barked, getting redder by the second. "Nobody told me a damn thing." At this point, I could see the vein in his forehead pulsing like it was about to blow. I kept my voice calm. "Okay, no problem. If you don't want the work done, we'll pack up and leave." He looked confused, like he'd been gearing up for a proper fight and didn't know what to do with himself when I didn't take the bait. That seemed to piss him off even more. He launched into a tirade of swear words and accusations while I radioed my supervisor. "Yeah," I said into the phone, "we got a customer on site who's not happy we're here. He's refusing the work." My supervisor could actually hear the guy shouting through the phone. "Jeez," he muttered. "Just pull off site and call me once you're clear." So Paul starts packing up the barriers while I'm still on the call, explaining the situation. Then mid-sentence, Mr. Angry comes stomping over to the van again. "Oi, you can do the effing job now. I found the letter." I stared at him. "You told me to F off and said we weren't to touch your drive. I'm not doing the job after that." His face went from red to purple. "You're refusing to help me?" "Sir," I said, trying not to laugh, "you literally just told me to F off. Twice." He stormed back toward his house, muttering something about useless wankers. While I finished my call with the boss, I explained the whole mess, how we'd spoken to his wife earlier, how she was perfectly lovely, and how we'd even waited to let her get her horse out so it wouldn't get spooked by the noise. Supervisor just sighed. "Right, abandon the job, not worth it." So we left. The job was officially marked refused by customer. Here's the best bit. The work we were going to do, it was free. We were there to check the pressure and potentially upsize his connection at no cost to him. All he had to do was not be an a-hole for half an hour. But since he refused and kicked us off the site, the company closed the file. That meant when he still had water pressure problems, which of course he did, he had to hire a private contractor. We found out a few months later through the grapevine that he ended up paying close to £5,000 to get a new service line laid. Meanwhile, we could have done it for free. So yeah, Mr. Angry got exactly what he deserved. He wanted to tell the water company to F off, and in the end, we did. His response wasn't just rude, it was strategically stupid. By unleashing his temper, he effectively fired a free service crew that was there to solve his problem. His ego in that moment was so massive that it blinded him to his own self-interest. He wanted to feel powerful by telling you to F off, and in the end, he got to be powerful and alone with his expensive new water pipe. A truly self-made problem with a perfectly just outcome. And our last story. My neighbor tried to claim our shared driveway was hers. Yesterday started off normal enough until my neighbor decided to lose her mind over a driveway. For context, my fiance and I live on a property with what's been described in old paperwork as a shared access driveway. It's long, wide enough for 2 cars, and connects both houses to the main road. We've used it since moving in without issue. Our property also has another driveway, technically, but it's steep as hell. You practically need a rally car to make it up without scraping the bumper, so naturally we use a flat one. Well, apparently that piece was too much for my neighbor. We'll call her Janet. Janet and her husband are leasing their home from one of her relatives, and until recently, we got along fine. We'd wave when taking out the trash, make small talk about the weather, all that neighborly fluff. But yesterday, she came storming out of her house while my fiancé and I were unloading groceries and started yelling, "You can't park there anymore," she snapped. I looked at her, confused. "What do you mean?" "That's our driveway. My husband and I are tired of you blocking it." I glanced around like I'd just been punked. "Janet, this driveway's always been shared." She crossed her arms, shaking her head. "Not anymore. We talked to my uncle and he owns this land, and he said it's our right of way. You need to move your cars before I call someone." At this point, I'm thinking she's bluffing. "Janet, we've used this driveway for years. You can't just change that because your uncle said something." She stepped closer, lowering her voice like she thought it'd make her sound intimidating. "Move your cars. Last warning, or there'll be consequences." My fiancé and I exchanged that look, the one that says, "Oh, it's going to be one of those days." We didn't move the cars. Instead, we went inside, had dinner, and figured she'd cool off. Spoiler, she didn't. This morning, I walk outside to leave for work and immediately notice something off. There are wooden posts jammed into the gravel behind both of our cars like makeshift barricades. Not huge, but enough that backing out would have scraped the bumpers. Janet was standing on her porch, arms crossed, wearing that smug try-me grin. "You like my new posts?" she called out. "Since you don't listen, I figured I'd help you remember where your property ends." That was it. I called the police. When the officers arrived, Janet practically sprinted out to meet them, all faux sweetness and hand gestures. "Oh, officers, I'm so glad you're here. These people keep trespassing and blocking my driveway." The cops looked at her, then at me, then back at the driveway. "Ma'am," one of them said, "do you have any documentation showing this is your property?" She pointed toward her house. "My uncle owns it." He said, "Ma'am," he interrupted, "that's not proof of ownership." I calmly handed over a printed copy of the county property map I'd pulled the night before, complete with parcel lines, lot numbers, and ownership info. Every inch of that driveway from the street to the garage was clearly shaded inside my property line. The officer took one look, nodded, and said, "Yeah, this driveway's entirely on their land." Janet's face went pale. "Ma'am," the officer continued, "if you believe the county's record is wrong, you'll need to hire a licensed surveyor. Until then, you cannot restrict their access or place anything on their property." Janet started stammering something about family rights and historical use, but the officer shut her down. That's not how property law works. After a few more minutes of arguing, she stormed back inside, slammed her door hard enough to rattle my windows, and hasn't spoken to us since. The posts are gone now. The cops made her remove them before leaving. I told her if she wants to waste money on a surveyor, go for it. But she might not like what she finds, because per county records, she doesn't own a single inch of the driveway she tried to ban me from. I'm half tempted to paint private drive, owner use only at the entrance, just to really drive the point home. While painting that private drive sign would be a deliciously petty cherry on top, your current position's actually stronger. You've already won, decisively and publicly. Any further action might fuel her narrative of being victimized. By simply going about your life and using your driveway as you always have, you demonstrate that her tantrum changed nothing. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.